So I guess I get to break some news. That's always great, right? When you're getting ready and you're preparing, you've done all this work, and then you get a big old curveball. You get an off-speed pitch. All right, guys. Kevin, first off, Chaps, Fantasy Chat. Coming to you from Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network. I thought I'd come on a few minutes early because some breaking news just came out in the baseball world. And thank you, Kevin, for giving me the heads up, giving me a second to research it. But I'm gladly going to report this. It appears that there's been a big trade between Tampa Bay and St. Louis. Tampa Bay sends Matt Liberatore, the heralded, I think, 20-year-old pitcher, starting pitcher, to St. Louis in exchange for Yadier Molina. So, this comes from, of course, it didn't come over. This comes from the St. Louis Cardinals fan page, or Twitter page. So this is a legitimate source. Pretty interesting news, right? Very interesting. First off, Matt Liberatore. Clearly I wasn't prepared for this. But I think it's important we talk about it. This is a fantasy baseball network, and this is what we love to do. So I have a great page of folks here talking with me. If you're not familiar, if this is your first time tuning in, the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com is where I'm, where home base is, pun intended. But, you know, in the chat room right now, you have some of the best podcasters in the business. In all honesty, Lenny's in here with us. Thanks, Lenny, for joining us. You got Royals29 Boom, also known as Aloha Fantasy Sports, also known as my good friend Kevin Hastings. And, you know, if you guys are here, I see there's some guests in here tonight. It just takes a second to log in. You can put your username on there and you can ask questions. The best part about this is that it's interactive. Okay? So, again, big trade tonight. Pretty interesting stuff. What do you guys think? I did not expect Yadier Molina to be the name in that trade. So the other thing that I noticed in just a few minutes of research that I did before coming on here, Nolan Gorman, Tampa Bay's heralded third baseman, is best friends with Matt Liberatore. So we'll reunite those guys. They were drafted, I believe, like 7th and 9th 2 years ago in the draft. So it's pretty cool. It's cool to see a 38-year-old Yadier Molina move teams. I mean, he's clearly still been a productive catcher. He should help the Rays. So awesome stuff. There's so much stuff. People talk about this being slow. Man, this is my favorite time of year. Okay? So, first off, pause. Can you guys hear me? Second off, again, let's talk about this. I'm Chappy. Chaps Fantasy Chat is what you're listening to. I love fantasy baseball. I think it shows in my research, and I hope you guys appreciate the content. Hey, Vic. Good to see you, buddy. I'll tell you again tonight. It's funny because I don't talk a whole lot about starting pitching throughout the season. So people, I think, often get this idea that I'm focused primarily on hitting. That's not the case. I focus deeply on pitching, but I just approach it a little bit differently. And tonight we're going to talk about what that looks like. Okay, so again, starting pitchers are interesting. I don't want to jump into it though. Before I talk about, I'm blessed. We have about a quarter of the mock draft that we go on. We're doing our first fantasy mock draft on Couch Managers, and you know Vishal and Royals and George, are you in there? I can't remember. Lenny's in there. Andrew's in there. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my team and really just kind of, it's exciting. Like I was talking to Andrew, it's both of our first mock of the year. So, you know, getting to feel out who we like. Obviously being in a mock draft with the talent level being this high, even though it is just a muck around draft, right? It's important to look good among your peers. So I think I've done pretty well. It's a slow draft, so we've only gotten through 4 rounds. But I want to talk about the players I got real quickly before we jump into the pitchers, because there's a lot to talk about, right? There's a lot of pitchers to talk about. So first off, I had the 6th pick, which I liked. I also liked picking between Lenny and Andrea. I actually purposefully chose that spot. I figured being sandwiched between the 2 experts, where else would you want to be if you're trying to get better, right? So the first round, I was lucky enough to have Francisco Lindor fall in my lap. I kind of snaked my buddy Vic Vishal. Sorry, Vic. He asked me who I was looking at, and I told him some other folks, and I was honestly looking at that time. And hey, Kevin, how are you? Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming by. So Lindor fell to me at 6. I'm happy to have that. I love Francisco Lindor. He's last year he had 284, 32 homers, and 22 stolen bases. I think high up in these drafts, you have to go for these 5-star players. The stolen base is the key category, right? So that was my first round pick. My second round pick was Jose Altuve. I love this pick, and when I'm going back and looking at it, I love it even more. He had 298 last year, which was low for him. He's a career 300 hitter, but he had 31 homers last year, which gave me. I stopped and paused for a minute there because I didn't expect that. You always known that he's had some power in his bat, but 31 homers was. I know you had juiced ball last year, right? But still pretty good. He had 6 stolen bases, which was also his career low. I look for both of those to kind of pendulum swing in the opposite directions. But I love Altuve with my second pick. He's 29 years old, so right there in the sweet spot as far as career longevity, right, and pretty safe from injury as well. So my third pick, Shane Bieber, I love. Here's the guy you're talking about. Really came out of nowhere last year. Year before that, he was kind of known as a 2-pitch pitcher. He was not that last year. 15-8, 3.28 ERA, 259 strikeouts, and 40 walks in 214 innings pitched. 40 walks in 214 innings pitched to me is elite. I love that statistic, and I'm glad to have him. My fourth pick is Luis Severino. We've talked quite a bit about it on other shows throughout this week. And Severino is, he suffered some injury last year, but if you look at his statistics from 17 and 18 and you combine them, showing again some consistency there, he is 33 and 14, 33 and 14, 3.18 ERA. Again, this is over 2 years, 450 Ks is just 97 walks and 384 innings pitched. I mean, there's some hesitancy there, I think, at first glance when you look at Severino. But you talk about a guy there, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. This guy wants to be out there pitching, right? And I want someone on my team that wants to be out there. And is as good as he is, okay? So, without further ado, I do want to jump into this because it's really fun, right? If you look at it, if you break it down, and I'm pausing just a minute because I want to share the article that we're working off of here. So I'm going to feed you guys a hyperlink. But if you look at ADP in regards to pitching, it's really all over the place right now. In a lot of ways, it's advantageous to have an early draft. Because the ADPs, people are drafting off them, they're all out of whack right now, right? So as we roll down through there, you have to keep in mind, these are moving targets. These are going to change, okay? So when I say that, just understand that when you're drafting early, you're going to get better values. As we get later on, you're going to have a body of work. These numbers are going to start to normalize. But here it is. Without further ado, I'm going to just give you guys my formula to doing this. So I like to bucket these guys, okay? I don't look so much at... I know I'm going to be able to get value at the back end of the draft with my pitching. If you do your homework, that's a given. That's a natural, right? So you really want to, on the front end, maximize your team with low-risk guys, okay? Guys that aren't going to get hurt. I mean, obviously, you can't always predict that. But there is a track record on a lot of these guys, right? So who am I talking about? The first bucket of guys who are durable. And there's guys all over the map with this, okay? You got guys on this list, obviously as high as, sorry, I don't multitask very well. Obviously as high as 14. Justin Verlander is my first pitcher, okay? Comes to mind a durable guy, right? He's been fairly consistent. He's found his second life. He's 36 years old, but boy, he's really kind of come into his own there in Houston, and you gotta love his body of work, right? Those are the type of guys, but they're not just first and second round picks. Yeah, only after the fourth time. Here's the article we're going off of, okay? And all this is, it's just, what I love about this is going to establish a baseline, right? And yeah, you're right, Mike Leake's a perfect example. We'll talk about guys like that later. At the front end of your draft, you want these guys that are going to get 200 innings pitched, okay? So again, Verlander, 36 years old, he was 21-6 last year, a 2.58 ERA, 14 ADP. Okay, that's going to stay pretty consistent, right? Second guy on this list, I think about durability. Mike Clevenger. Andy loves this guy. I love this guy. I've loved this guy for a while now. At 29 years old, this is a guy, again, that falls into that Luis Severino bucket. He wants to be out there. Yes, he had an injury last year, but he's been pretty damn durable when he's been out there. He wants to be out there. He wants to pitch complete games. He's the kind of guy you want, okay? 23 ADP. 13-4 last year, 2.71 ERA, 169 strikeouts on 37 walks, and 126 innings pitched. Those are excellent numbers, okay? Charlie Morton's another guy I think about when I think about durability. Right? You see, we're kind of all over the place in age here because at this point, I'm worried about being able to trust these guys, especially high up in these drafts. If you're talking about the first 100 ADP, you're talking about the first 6 or 7 rounds. You can't squander a pick that high, right? So you have to. I'm going to talk about Jameson Battalion Malpau. I'm going to talk about him. And welcome, by the way. Thanks for joining. Again, Charlie Morton, 61 ADP. I think he gets lost a little bit, right? Really had a great year last year, 16-6, a 3.05 ERA, 240 strikeouts. Zach Greinke's another one. 71 ADP, another 36-year-old. He's in Houston now. You got to like his situation there. Mad Bum. Now we're starting to talk about values. These middle ground guys, right? These are guys that you're supplanting, that you're building your depth on, right? When you take one of these guys up early, you want to backfill him with one of these middle tier players to kind of. I love Chris Sale, Lenny. I think that was a great pick. I was actually eyeing him because usually with pitchers like that coming off an injury, the next year back they're ready to they're relatively rested. Right? So I think Chris Sale's a great pitcher. I thought that was a great pick. I don't have his ADP in front of me, but you guys might could tell me. I posted that on the line. Anyway, I think that's a good pick. Mad Bum at 113. Again, he's only 30, guys. He's only 30. You gotta love he's going to feel comfortable at home in Arizona, right? He chose to go to Arizona. He's going to get to play the Giants. You have to understand, Mad Bum's a guy who's very much